So this is our topic for today. Productive struggle. What is it? What do we mean? So just a few guidelines. Just if you're not speaking, you can go ahead and mute yourself. You can leave your cameras off if you wish, of course. We are recording, and the webinar slides and the recording will be available on our website in a couple of weeks. If you have questions, technical issues, feel free to put them in the chat. Does that include me? No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes I have technical issues. All right, and just some general information. There's our website. You can find us in the general CGU website. There's our email. We offer consultations, webinars, resources, the college teaching certificate. So I would encourage you to check any of those options out. Some essential questions for the day. What is productive struggle? Why use it in the classroom? So these are things that we're going to think about. And our goals is just to really get an understanding of what that means and what it looks like in the classroom. What are the pieces that fit in under the term productive struggle, and just explore options for what we can do in the classroom. And I'll tell you more about that in a second. So first of all, we hear these terms often, right? Perseverance, resiliency, grit, rigor. This is what we want in the classroom. We want a rigorous classroom. We have to meet outcomes and standards and so on and so forth. But in my observation, I think it gets muddled and sometimes it's not clear what we mean by those terms. How do we get there? I was in a classroom once and a student said, oh, I watched this really great TED Talk about grit. And we watched it. And in that conversation, a student raised her hand and she says, but what if you don't know how to get it? Like, how do you get grit? I don't even know what that means. So it was a good conversation, and it stayed with me, and it made me realize that not every student has that in their toolkit. So hopefully there are ways that we can think about what to do in the classroom to help students build those skills like resiliency, grit, perseverance. They don't always have that with them, or they don't realize that they have those traits. With these terms, productive struggle, warm demander, empathy, sometimes there is an idea that they don't go together. And, this business of being a warm demander or being empathetic means that you're giving away grades, or you're not, keeping a rigorous classroom. So I like thinking about how to pull those things together for your students and create an environment that helps them learn, but still helps challenge them and helps them build that resiliency. And when we do that, we become the kind of instructor that creates a classroom that addresses equity, inclusivity, ethics. It appeals to a diverse group of students. So it seems like a big task. I thought that too. It's like, how can I do this? But there are small changes and small ways of doing things and thinking that will help create that environment for your students. So, what is productive struggle? So when you hear that term, if you can just think for yourself, what do you think of when you hear that term productive struggle? Does this connect with any of you? Like frustration? Productivity maybe means you have to have all these deliverables and it's got to be regimented. Does it mean that you're going to work towards something and there's going to be a payoff? Or maybe it's just work and there really isn't much payoff. So I think there are varying ways to think of productive struggle, and it will be different for our students. Some of them will have experienced that kind of work with a payoff. Some will have experienced just a lot of work with not much payoff, or a lot of anxiety associated with the work. So wherever you land in this category, we can think about what to do with those terms. So there are different ways of looking or defining the terms. So it's about effortful practice. Effortful practice. It goes beyond passive reading, listening, right? It's that active learning and promoting that long-term learning, lifelong learning. And letting students grapple with those issues and come up with a solution. It helps develop persistence, resilience, but how we get them to grapple and how we support them in that struggle makes a difference. This one I thought by Miriam Pasquale was helpful. It was in thinking about productive struggle, it's helping them understand the strategies that they're using and assessing whether it's productive. So it's about that process rather than the final outcome. Helping them understand that when they meet a dead end or they don't arrive at the resolution that they had hoped for, it's understanding to re-engage and find a different strategy. And when they continue to labor and struggle and understand the problem as a whole, that's when you're really getting into productive struggle. And this pertained to mathematics. And I wondered, how can we use that in other types of curriculum? I teach writing, and yeah, that's a struggle, and it is helping them think about different ways to construct a sentence or construct an essay, or different ways to construct a thesis. So I think this applies, this type of work applies beyond mathematics. And that's the trick, is figuring out how to use this in your field or in your classroom. Okay, let's talk about rigor, because that's, I think, what many instructors and administrators are concerned about. So we have to, of course, maintain a certain level of rigor. So what is it? What is rigor? Let's talk about that term. So if we look at Merriam-Webster's definition, as you can see, right, it's harsh inflexibility, severity, strictness, austerity, a tremor caused by a chill, a condition that makes life difficult, strict precision. And if you are dealing in that world, right, rigor mortis, meaning like rigor mortis has set in to this dead organism, and now it's stiff and dead. And so the word rigor, I think, carries with it some connotations that maybe we don't want to carry into the classroom. So we can rethink the idea of rigor. And Brian Stabnick writes that rigor is the result of work that challenges students' thinking in new and interesting ways. It occurs when they're encouraged toward a sophisticated understanding of fundamental ideas and are driven by curiosity to discover what they don't know. And I would add, it's great to encourage them that they don't need to know everything. I remarked to my students the other day, we were working on something, and it was thesis statements, and it was a little bit hard. And they were like, I don't know how to do it. And I'm like, well, this is not, freshman, I know everything 101. This is a composition class where you're learning these things. So just go with the process, go with it. And it helped kind of ease their anxieties about not knowing something. So in the classroom, right? So when we're thinking about rigor in the classroom, yes, we're thinking about high expectations, but we can also think about transparency and helping understand why you've designed your course in the way that you have and how it helps get them to that desired outcome or that standard. But in the classroom, we can also, with that, design safety nets or be a little bit flexible. So revisions, test corrections, assignments that add to, even if it's just a small extra credit where they're reworking whatever they are whatever task or project they've been assigned. So trying to figure in a little bit of flexibility and not necessarily a whole other task or project. You might even think about choice, like asking students, well, what do you think would be helpful to you for extra credit that's going to, let's meet in the middle, right? I need to see that you can do the work. You need to be able to complete the work. So maybe having that conversation and allowing students to choose how they can demonstrate to you what they have learned. And also a little bit of empathy, right? Sometimes it does take students a few more tries. I know I was that student when it came to math. I needed more attempts, I needed more time, and it was just, I'm so thankful I had a teacher that gave that to me and allowed me that extra time and extra attempt at certain things. And in the classroom, along with that rigor, if you're building trust with your students and among students, when they trust each other, they will stay with you through the most rigorous tasks and they will keep trying. But trust is important, and how we get there will differ sometimes class to class and student to student. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. Along with the terms that we were looking at earlier, productive struggle, rigor, warm demander, what does that mean? That was something new to me as well. I didn't know what that meant. I knew demander. I understood that. But a warm demander, I'm like, does that mean you're just, saying it with a smile, but you're really still harsh? So when I looked into it, I thought, all right, I get that. Carol Dweck, right, our fix and growth mindset guru, offers us this information to keep our minds focused on what we will be doing for our students, right? If parents want to give their children a gift, and I think we can change that. If instructors want to give their students a gift, the best thing they can do is teach them to love challenges, be intrigued by mistakes, enjoy effort, keep on learning. That way, their children don't have to be slaves of praise. They will have a lifelong way to build and repair their own confidence. And even though she's using the word children, I think that still applies to students and just humans in general, right? Is loving those challenges, being able to understand that mistakes are part of the process and to keep going. This is a way to build and repair confidence. So by the time students get to college, they've already often had 12 years of different experiences, some positive, some not so positive. And yes, when they get to higher ed, we as instructors can do a little more, I think, to help them build their confidence and sort of repair and help them understand how to get there. Matt Alexander he wrote a blog for edutopia.com. And here's what he talks about in his article, right? Warm demanders hold their students to high standards and provide the support that students need to get there, thus creating an equitable classroom. And so I think all of this ties together. If we're thinking about equity and inclusivity, it's using other means. It's not always a matter of this exact curriculum, this exact formula or assignment, but maybe being a little bit more creative and thinking of other ways to engage in equity, inclusivity for our classrooms. So here are some approaches that we can take with our students. Believe in the student's potential, right? Get to know their cultural strengths, understand their cultural strengths. Who are their role models? What's going on in their community? Tap into their prior knowledge. I think that is a very important component in getting students to engage as well, is getting them to realize that they do bring things into the classroom that will help them be successful. build trust, right? Listen to your students, learn about who they are, what matters to them. And sometimes it's just in this 10 minutes before class or 5 minutes before class when you have that small chit chat that you hear about things. Be vulnerable, share your true self. And that's sometimes difficult, but really, honestly, they like it when you hear that you yourself are not perfect. Still be strict about things that matter, but establish those clear, firm boundaries. And that will help them develop autonomy to make mistakes, learn from them, and know what they need to focus on. Teaching self-discipline. Sometimes this one's a little bit harder, but rather than do it for compliance, remind them that meeting standards and teaching and talking about self-discipline, it's also about respect for people's time, for people's jobs, really. It doesn't mean you have to micromanage your students or punish them if they don't meet your expectations. It just means teaching them the disciplines of hard work and normalizing that effort and how that can lead to success. And then finally, embracing failure. Teaching students to have growth mindset and understand that learning comes through failure, and that's part of the process. And it's to be expected. And when that happens, what's the next step? How do you pick up and keep going? That will help build students' resiliency, grit, all those great things that we hope for our students. Now, before I carry on, are there questions from any of you that you would like to ask at this point? And while you're thinking of questions, I'm going to take a quick sip of water. And there will also be
about the age. Yes. About the age. So the student we're gonna teach him. So we're talking about the stuff. The people, I think it's over 16 or and above of that. And I have another question about the student. So let's say I have a class from 10 students, and let's say they have 3 of them, they are maybe prepare more than the other 7. So I will have a gap here, because they understand it more and faster than the other 7. So what I need to be here, what I need to do, it's like, it's hard for me because I was a student and I have this problem. So I don't see any effort in that. So what do you recommend for that?
So when it comes to, the different experience or, readiness, I guess, for the classroom, that's when you can use different types of assignments. Or if you've got, like, for instance, I have exercises that the students do, and they can choose their starting points. So I will have like a range of, 12 grammar exercises. And I say to them, you need to complete, at least 6. Let's just do that. So pick your starting point and choose where you want to begin. And then, if a student says, I just want to do 6, then sometimes we can say, okay, let's think about some extra credit. Would you like to do something else? So I have a tendency to like stack or have other things ready to go if we're doing group work. And so when I say, hey, if you're finished, here's an extra project and you can do this and that, or here's a group, you can do this and that. So sometimes just having different types of assignments, or allowing people to start an assignment in class during group time, and if they don't finish it, okay, that's fine. You can finish it at home and turn it in next time, as long as you finish it. So even if it's something kind of fixed where they need to complete the whole packet, sometimes if it works for your class, you might allow them to take it home and finish it at home and bring it back the next day. But I don't know, Shamini, do you have any recommendations? I know Shamini's always got good recommendations for classroom environments in that way.
Well, I was remembering a class, but it's pretty much what you said. The baseline is being the warm demander, always demanding, right? So you reminded me, Catherine, when you were talking, I had a class where you had these students who they have always been a little frustrated because they could do so much more. But, the classroom is always set. This is the work. But the moment there was choice of assignments, once you put that idea in their head, they will come in. And those who want to fly, you can be a warm demander at that level, especially if you let them help you. So what would you like to do to stretch yourself? You're flying. But that won't leave anybody else behind because, like Catherine said, allowing them to the autonomy, the choice to pick where they're comfortable means they will ground into confidence. And then you can push them, hey, you did that so well, do the next one. So it's this process of being a warm demander at every level, I think. So concrete things, have a range of assignments, give the choice to students. Bit scary, but trust it, it works.
And if I can add to that, a couple of things. I have a bank of quizzes that are related to, that they can take online at their own pace, that are related to different types of grammar or writing structures. And I will say, okay, between now and 3 weeks, I need you to complete 5 quizzes. And you choose the 5 that will help you the most. And they're unlimited. So it's mostly practice. So they hear quiz, and so they're like, oh, I got to get it right. But if you allow them to do the unlimited where they have to repeat it until they get it right, it's part practice, but it's also, learning. The other thing that I've tried in my classroom is with like peer review for essays. I guess you could do it online in breakout rooms, maybe. I don't know. It would take a little redesign. But it's students volunteered, like, what can you help other people with? And so students would say, I'm great at sentence structure. I'm great at grammar. I'm really good at coming up with ideas and brainstorming. And then arranging them as kind of the leads or arranging tables at the time. I would say, okay, this is the table if you want to work on brainstorming. This is the table if you need help with sentence structure. And then they could choose where they wanted to go to work on certain things. So it didn't single people out that were struggling in different areas. I would just set up like a table, like, okay, go here if you want to talk about this, or go here if you want to talk about that. And then the people that were the volunteers to help in those arenas, stayed close to those tables and worked on that. And so sometimes it's just a matter of, helping them choose what they want help with, because I think they inherently know where they're struggling. So maybe trying to capitalize on that. So I hope that was helpful. And it's.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for both of you. I appreciate it. Thank you. It's helped me. Yeah.
There's another question in chat from Marissa. Can you talk more? It's a really good one. Can you talk more about what it means to hold your students to a high standard? I've been resistant to this term. Totally agree with you, Marissa, and many others on your list, right? That list in the past, because it sounds very rigid to me. There's that term, rigor, rigid. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on how to do this flexibly and empathetically.
So I do like that question, because yes, it is. And I don't necessarily use those terms in the classroom, like, oh, you've got to maintain this high standard or expectation. But, I will explain to them, listen, this is what I need to see, this type of work. Or I will say, okay, a thesis needs to contain these components. And very often I will not position it as like, oh, it's so hard. I have a tendency to say, you'll get there, you can do it. You're going to practice and it's going to be fine. And I think once I say that, they look at me like, okay, well, if you think I can do it, and then they keep trying. So, excuse me, I feel that if they believe that you believe in them, they will keep going. And it really comes back to this idea of support. And I will tell them, yeah, I know it seems tough, and that's fine, because it means you're learning something if it's really challenging. But we are going to work through it. We are going to work on exercises. We're going to go through these steps, and you will get there. I really believe that. And excuse me, for my students, it works. We were doing a thesis workshop the other day, and one of my students puts in the chat, I feel so small. I was like, oh no. And it was sweet, because she put it out to the rest of the class. She was just this, she's just a sweetheart.
Can I add
And
to
so,
that?
yes,
Oh,
yes.
sorry. I go on, finish.
Yeah. And so when we were working through the steps, and then I could see her nodding her head. And then towards the end, after we did the group activity and all the things that we were doing, I asked her again, I said, do you still feel the same way? And she's like, no, I feel like I'm pretty sure I can do this. And I said, yeah, give it a try. And then we'll just keep working on it. We'll keep revising just like we did in class. That's what we're here to do. So I think, when you're communicating to the students that you believe that they can do it and that they'll get there, it's helpful. And they also like hearing about your own struggles when you thought, oh, I can't do it. And that you had to figure out a strategy and figure out a way to do something. So I'm not sure I hope that answered that question. But yeah, I would say if you don't want to use those terms in your classroom, don't use them. Just say, hey, I need to see that you can do this, and not create a situation that it's something beyond their reach. I'm not sure if that, let me know if that doesn't answer the question. We can keep talking about it.
Marissa
Absolutely.
says, thanks. Yeah, please come and talk to us about these things, because there's so many connected issues. I was sorry I interrupted you, Catherine, but I was just going to say, it's that thing you said about communication. In the past, I've actually changed the phrase high standard, because people have a feel about it. And it's like, you have to reach a high standard and I don't have to do anything to help. It's like, where is the rigor for the teacher, right? We've changed the language in the school I taught to be how can you achieve your best self? And then we let the students decide what the best self is. So, and, students will choose, say, well, this semester I have so much going on, so I'm going to work on this project. So being the best self connected with the differentiated instruction or assignments, letting people choose, it really helps get away from the idea that there is one high standard, a bar of perfectionism. And that's a very oppressive thing to put on people, not just students, anywhere in life.
Yeah, and if I can add just one last thing, and this is for all of you. No matter what you're teaching, I did this one semester because I had a writing class, and I knew my student skills were in a lot of different places, and I had students that didn't graduate high school, didn't go to high school, some were formerly incarcerated. So I had a lot of different types of students in my class. And so I started to incorporate these quick writes at the beginning of class that had nothing to do with what we were going to talk about that day. And it was simply, when did you teach yourself something? How did you teach that? And then another one was, describe a time when you taught somebody how to do something and how did you feel about that? And it was really just in service to helping them understand that they do know how to learn things. They do know how to teach other people, and they can take pride in that kind of knowledge and in that moment and apply it to what we're doing in the classroom. And because I teach writing, commas are always tricky. And so when we got through our comma segment and they were getting it, that's when I revealed to them, well, guess when I learned commas, really? I said, not till grad school. I said, so look at that. You learned something that I really didn't learn until grad school. So congratulations. And I think they felt very proud of themselves that they were able to do something that I wasn't able to do until later in my academic journey. So sometimes, yeah, if you can share with them your successes and failures, they feel a little bit more connected, and they feel like, okay, well, she did it, I can do it too. So that, and I think that will be for anyone, just helping students understand that they know how to learn things, they know how to be successful in other areas. And sometimes they share, I'm like, what's something you're good at? Let's just talk about it. And so they'll say all sorts of things, and it's a great icebreaker too. Okay, let's carry on with supporting students. A great conversation. Thank you for asking those questions. Let's get back here. Wait a minute, I think yeah, here we go. So a little bit about kind of what we were already saying about tasks, projects, and assignments. Transparency, meaningfulness, explaining to them how things are scaffolded, giving them choice, different ways to engage, or different entry points for the task. So here's a bank of, questions you need to work through. Choose the starting point that, is already feeling a little difficult for you, or progress as far as you can progress, and then develop maybe a homework assignment to pick up where that left off. So I think there's ways to help students understand, the whole range of progress, and then helping them understand where they are in that progress and how much further they need to go, or how they can stretch their skills. And encouraging that growth mindset about learning, making mistakes, acknowledging perseverance and effort. So getting those process-oriented tasks or projects into your curriculum, so it's not just the one and done, you got it right or wrong. Maybe helping them figure out a process, or figuring out strategies for solving problems, or writing essays, or whatever it is that they're doing. Using additive feedback that focuses on progress, the work that they're doing, how they're solving the problem, or how they're attempting to work through a strategy, or their critical thinking or ideas that they're using. So those are just some foundational ways I think that you could incorporate this kind of rigor and empathy into your classroom. There we go. Some habits, flexibility, formative assessments, asking students to describe how they worked through a process and reflect on the moments of struggle, or if they made a mistake, how they resolved it. And it's great to have a class discussion about that, like, hey, where did you struggle? How did you resolve it? Let's talk about it so we can help each other. And students usually are pretty forthcoming when they hear that this is what the topic is like, how did you resolve that struggle? Not just, hey, I was confused, but what did you do to work through that? And then praising that good work, that perseverance. If you do have those high expectations, or if the class is particularly challenging, always use scaffolding and support to get them through the challenges. And yeah, I think maybe for another webinar, I should change that from high expectations to something different. Thank you, Marissa. And then just in general, the classroom environment, right? Making mistakes is part of the process, and focus on their learning and the process that they're engaging in as they're learning, and teaching them how to support each other. So for example, since I teach writing, I give them the language and the script, I guess, so that when they are working with other students, rather than say, well, that doesn't sound right, it's, hey, can you explain this a little bit more? I wasn't clear about what you were saying here. I think this could have more descriptive detail. So teaching them how to give feedback to each other, and also to the point where that came up earlier about all the different levels of skills. I often tell my students, Okay, if you already know how to do this, that's fine. Listen to how I'm explaining it, because when you're in peer review and you want to explain and talk about this concept, this is how you talk about it. So it helps them listen in a different way if they already know the content. That's my tip. And then just general ideas about, student and teacher actions. So if you're, as a teacher, anticipating those areas of struggle and you're prepared to support them, the student knows that, the struggle will probably happen, but knows that support is available. If you give students time to work through a struggle, and that's where the flexibility comes in, then they will feel comfortable asking questions if they know that, okay, yeah, this is going to be a process. You'll have time to do, ask questions or work with a group. If you're facilitating discussion about mistakes, revisions, and the process, it becomes clearer that it's the process that's more important in the learning rather than the final outcome. And as you're praising effort and perseverance, they're more inclined to participate and talk to their peers about the work that they're doing and how they're doing it, and exchange ideas about that work rather than how do I just get to that A. I know that's the struggle, right, for us as teachers, how to get them to quit fixating on points. Okay, so I wanted to come back to this slide from the beginning and hear your thoughts, right? We talked a little bit about this, what it looks like, what it means. We talked about infusing empathy and being a warm demander and the idea of productive struggle, and then thinking more about equity, inclusivity, and ethics. So, if it feels overwhelming, I'm going to say you can do it. I believe that. And sometimes it's just a little adjustment here and there, or just opening up, an assignment in a different way rather than creating something completely new or different. And that kind of work leads to leadership, right? As a teacher, we want to lead our students, not just push out content and leave it at that. And it also helps students develop their own leadership skills, understanding how to work with others, collaborate, work through a project. I think it works on different levels. And then just some thoughts about, what we can do today. If you're teaching, if you've got a classroom, what are some things you can do? So coming up with those non-competitive activities, focusing on working together, making students or asking students to author their instruction by giving them choices, using multiple modalities, encourage learning from mistakes. And these are just some general things that we did mention them. So it's just kind of a recap. Encourage students' curiosity and risk-taking. Think about those experiential learning models, like how to do and working through a step in the classroom, a bit like a flipped classroom where they're doing the work in class and then they go home and do their homework and recreate that process for themselves. Thinking about prior personal knowledge that comes into the classroom or their experiences, helping them just connect and engage and be seen, I believe. And then again, just finally, right, just think about slight modifications versus a fundamental redesign of what you're doing. When you can just make those slight adjustments to make your assignments or your classroom a little bit more equitable or inclusive, really will engage students. And, not only are they learning from you about content, they're watching, they're seeing how you treat other students. They notice who gets left out and left behind. So I would say the more you can do this for your classroom, it's helping them in terms of learning and content, but also about a community, right? Building a community in your classroom. And just, it's so simple, but they do need to hear it. Students need to hear that academic achievement is possible for everyone. And it seems very overly simple, but I think it's very true. Even for me, I sometimes need to hear someone say, yeah, you can do this. You know how to do this. So just keep going. So if you're working through a dissertation, I bet you need that too. Okay, before we finish off, we've got a couple of other webinars coming up: how to be an anti-racist educator and developing effective student learning outcomes. Now we have a poll. Shamini, are you able to launch the poll, or do I have to do it?
I can launch it.
Can you? Thank you.
Here we go.
So we have just a quick poll, if you don't mind answering, just about your thoughts regarding this webinar, my webinar. Thank you. And it's anonymous, yes?
Yes. So we'll give a few minutes to give everyone a chance to vote. And then we'll have time for, questions and more conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is a never-ending conversation. We always need to think about these things. And I will say, Shamini, before I started working here, when I thought, no, I shouldn't apply, I don't know how to do those things, you even told me, you know how to learn, so you'll learn it. And I was like, oh yeah, that's true. Okay. So I've taken that just small little moment and I've employed that in my classroom, and it did make a difference. I'm like, you can do it. You know how.
Not hard to have, like every student, like as a special case. In the beginning, I was thinking we can do like a standard for the whole student, but when I see the webinar now, no, every student is like a special case. So I need to, do whatever I can do to help him in his case, in his way. So what can you explain it to me more, please? Or what example do you have for that?
You know what came to my mind, if I'll just jump in very quickly, was when we work with anybody in any setting, workplace, family, parent, no child is a standard child, right? Every child is I like how you said it. It's a unique case. That means that, yeah, it's not like you can have a cookie cutter formula for how to teach. Teaching is one of the most powerful leadership roles we can play, and what we're trying to do is say, let's build a whole bunch of tools and strategies, because you also are limited capacity. You can't be everything to everybody. How much can you? So learning some strategies of how to create a community, get the students to be open about learning, get them to help each other. It really helps both the students and the teacher. So, that's just my thought about that.
Right, it's very helpful. Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought.
Yeah, and I think if you help them understand help them understand the process and the steps, and understand that, you can work through these steps, and maybe some of you are at step 3, some of you are at step 2, and you just keep going. I think that is helpful in helping them understand where they are, and, that they can complete the steps. I have students all the time very fixated on grades, and, I have an open revision policy. And I said, look, if you get an 80 out of 100, it doesn't mean you're done. It means you just have to do a little bit more work and you'll get where you need to get. It's just like if you're asking directions and you need to get to the next city, and someone says, yeah, it's just 5 more miles. You just get back in your car and you just keep going. And that's, I think, by deflating that anxiety, lets them engage and go, oh, okay, I just need to keep going. And I think that has helped, even in my own classroom. I don't have students like, how many more points? How do I get this? And how do I get this? And I want, 2 more points because I want this grade. I've gotten a lot less of that when I started opening revision and, my revision opportunities. And I call mistakes, it's not a mistake, it's an opportunity for revision. And they kind of laugh because I say, yeah, let's frame it that way. So don't think like, oh, I can't write. Just think of it as like you have to practice. And then I share stories with them about revisions and what I've seen and other famous writers who've had lots of revisions over and over and over. And then they kind of get how it works. So yeah, I think it's, and I think that's a great analogy, Shamini. I had 2 kids and they were completely different in terms of, discipline and, self-discipline and how they reacted to things. One always needed the whole entire conversation about why this is a rule. And the other one was just like, okay, got it. Rule, I'm moving on. And he didn't care. So it was very interesting in my household.
There's a question in chat.
Yes.
Kathy, can you give examples of assignments or formative assessments that are appropriate for 101 foundational courses that usually emphasize content knowledge? We all know those, right? What other types of things might be appropriate to emphasize that they are not right or wrong? To create that exploration, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, how should I put this? Because I teach writing and reading and critical thinking, it's, for me, we don't have to do the right wrong. And I always tell them right off the bat, we're not going to do right wrong. That's not what this class is for. We're going to think about, different perspectives, different ways of approaching this idea. If we're dealing with grammar and punctuation, and then I just simply say, yes, it's pretty solid. The comma goes here or the period goes there or this or that, but why do we need punctuation or why do we need that? And we have a conversation about why there are certain instances about right, wrong. And then I try to infuse a little bit of humor when I can. So like if we're thinking about commas, I'm like, what happens when we have let's eat grandma, no comma, with, oh my God, cannibals, right? Or if we have let's eat, comma, grandma, it's an address to someone like, hey, grandma, let's eat. So sometimes framing it that way and it's helpful. I don't know. Shamini, do you have any?
I taught some of those classes. So I taught one class on kind of child language development. This is pretty basic. There's right and wrong, there's theory. I also taught a history class, theater history. So one of the things that maybe we have to do as teachers is to separate in our own minds the factual content knowledge that they need. And then think to yourself, it is a 101 class, but surely there is more to learning than that, because the 101 class is where they might get excited or hate the subject. And if we just go on the this is right, that is wrong, they may end up like, this is not a subject that engages me. So even in a 101 class, we have to do the why space, the what does it mean thing. And my analogy for this is dance. When I learned dance, there is a right, wrong. You have to have a 45-degree turnout. You have to have certain balances in your body. And there's no getting away from it. But if that was all that we had to learn in our intro to dance class, I would have left it. We also did choreography, composition to create something. So one thing is, yes, accept that there are right and wrongs. But for example, with quizzes, what about letting the students design the quizzes? It's a very sneaky way of getting them to do a lot of revision if they have to come up with the good questions and the answers for them. What if you had quizzes that could be taken 25 times if they like it, and they can get until the second last week of semester, they can take the quiz over and over to improve their score. Many of them will do it a few times.
they will do it, and they will also do it like, I am not taking this quiz again. And they
Right.
will make sure that
get
they
it
get it
right.
right, because we're like, look, I'm not spending, another,
Right.
run on this quiz. Yeah. So
But that opens the flexibility for those who need more time to revise. It's a great way to get students to focus on the effort, not the outcome. Yeah, they're going for the outcome, but they're putting in the effort. But really, then making sure that some of your assignments are not about the facts. Some of the assignments might. So when I did the child language development, some of the assignments were about just doing a little bit of the cultural background of different types of cultures and the way, say, stories contribute to child language development. So they didn't just have to learn the technicalities of it, right? And that was a 101 class, but it meant that they suddenly got the aha about why something was important. So I don't know if that, Kathy, answers all your questions, but
and if I could just chime in, and this is when transparency helps too, is talking about it and then asking them, why do you think there needs to be a right and wrong for this? And they're pretty good. Like, because I have to teach academic language, I do ask them, like, when is it good to know it? When do we not need it? And having them just think about it in a different way sort of takes the sting out of it, I guess you could say. And if I could add to having students create quiz questions, I've done that kind of like, oh, I'm so sick of coming up with quiz questions. I made it a game, and I said, yeah, okay, team 1, team 2, and you got to try to stump each other, but it can't be so hard that the person can't answer it, because then that's not a good question. So you have to calibrate and ask questions related to content, and the winner gets 5 points, the second place gets 4 points. That's it. And they're usually pretty good about that. They love games, and they like coming up with things like that. So I don't know.
I put a quick summary in the chat, and I realized that one of the big, like the bottom line takeaways, is separating for your students transparently that these are assignments about the facts of the subject, or here are 2 assignments about the why of the subject or perspectives on the subject. So they also know that they're learning facts because that gives them tools, but they're using those facts or exploring those facts. And that is not a necessarily right, wrong place, but it's a multiple perspective space. Good question. There's a lot there.
Yes, you've asked, all of you asked challenging questions, so thank you. I want to be mindful of your time. So it's now 2:00. I'm going to go ahead, and the poll has ended. Do we share the results or no? Okay, there we go. So thank you for coming to the webinar today. Thank you for asking questions. Let me give you the last few slides here. Here are some resources. These will be posted online. Matt Alexander, Barbara Blackburn has a lot of great information. Looking at systems thinking that sometimes helps with thinking of processes. UDL, diversity, equity, inclusivity. If you'd like to come see us, you can make an appointment. We're on LinkedIn, as well as Twitter and Facebook. Here are all of our social platforms. And again, these will be included in the slides that we post. And that's what we were doing. So we were already there. We jumped right ahead. So thank you. Please come and check out our other webinars. Come visit us if you want to talk about course design, assignments, syllabus kind of stuff. We are here. And otherwise, that's it. That's it. I'll hang out if anyone wants to talk or ask questions. But I hope to see you in one of our other webinars very soon. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. It was very helpful, and the information is really, really important. And we put our mind in an area where never think we're gonna think about it, but it's like you give the light here and the light here. So like we said, we are in the process. We need the learning. It's a process, and the process is never end. That's why. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it is. It's a constant, it's an evolving process because as you said, each student is different. Every classroom is different. Sometimes I've had students that are like, no, give us the hard stuff. And I'm like, okay, here you go. Yeah, I had one time a student, because when I would do mini quizzes in class, I would then give the answers. And one student was like so annoyed. He's like, well, that's like cheating. You're just giving us the answers after we just took it. And I'm like, but isn't that how you learn? He's like, no. He's like, I just want the grade. I can do that too. That's fine. Yeah. And sometimes I will tell them, let me know if because my writing topics are pretty open. And I will say, let me know if you need me to give you more structure. If that's how you operate, let me know. I'm happy to talk to you about it and point you down a different road, and, kind of like an algorithm. It's like, you tell me what you're interested in. Let's figure out a topic or a thesis or whatever you want to work on. Yeah. So I think, it's kind of remarkable, when I was first thinking about equity and inclusivity, I really thought I was going to have to do more stuff, but I have found that the less I do, the better it is, the more open it is, and letting students choose and engage in a way that makes sense changes the dynamics. So yeah, that's my recommendation, is just be flexible, be open, and open up your course a little bit, and it'll also ease your workload as well in that sense. So good luck with your students. Thank you for coming today.